The sudden outbreak of the Israel-Iran war has now lasted a week. While the world's attention is on whether President Trump will soon issue an order to completely destroy Iran's nuclear ambitions, Israel has not only crippled Iran, but also struck at the true mastermind behind the Iranian regime, the Chinese Communist Party. On June 18th, a Chinese TikTok influencer seized the moment by releasing a video about Israel's decapitation operation against Iran. This sparked widespread resonance among viewers. The video's comments were flooded with the word take, showing that many Chinese people were eager for the CCP's leadership to be taken and decapitated. Another commenter posted coordinates that, upon investigation, led directly to the site of the CCP's leadership office in Beijing. Viewers were taken aback, noting that the leading party had openly voiced their stance. The Israeli missile strikes and their message to the Iranian people seemed to have awakened many Chinese citizens. Some even suggested that, given this momentum, Taiwan's military could strike the CCP's headquarters with just a small team of soldiers. On June 13th, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video on the first day of the war with Iran stating,
"The regime doesn't know what hit them. They don't know what will hit them. It has never been weaker. This is your opportunity to stand up and let your voices be heard."
As Israel launched airstrikes on Iran's national television, some Iranian citizens posted coordinates of the TV station on social media, calling for Israel to strike it. Many viewers commented that Israel's attack on the Iranian state mouthpiece seems to be at the request of the Iranian people. On June 15, Israel's largest English-language newspaper, the Jerusalem Post, published an editorial titled, "Israel Acted, Now It's Time for the Iranian People to Rise." The editorial summarized the successes of Israel's operations, highlighting the unified spirit and unwavering belief in victory across Israel, noting that even the opposition supports the government's actions against Iran. The editorial described how Israelis were using WhatsApp to send messages of solidarity to the Iranian people, emphasizing that this war is not with the people of Iran, it's with the evil regime that oppressed them and threatens the rest of the world. The editorial pointed out that while tyranny doesn't fall overnight, Israel's actions have exposed the weaknesses of the Iranian regime, shattering their myths. The editorial ended with a powerful declaration. "The hope we extend now is to the Iranian people. Do not be afraid. The 46 years you have suffered is long enough. The axis of evil that linked Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Quds Force is much weaker today than it was on Thursday. Help yourselves and you'll find partners across the region, from Riyadh to Rabat to, yes, Jerusalem." The Jerusalem Post editorial quickly reverberated through Chinese communities, with many people commenting that it seemed to describe the CCP and that the Chinese people have endured far more than 46 years. They expressed hope for U.S. and Taiwanese assistance to overthrow the CCP's totalitarian regime. The editorial's call for an uprising among the Iranian people was compared to the collapse of the Soviet Union, with warnings that the CCP might fall in the same way, a scenario that the CCP fears the most. Israel's sustained strikes on Iran have exposed the weaknesses of a once dominant authoritarian regime. At the same time, Israel's call to the Iranian people have highlighted the vulnerabilities of both Iran's regime and the CCP. The most feared thing by authoritarian rulers is that their people will no longer fear them, that the people will awaken. Many Chinese online commenters pointed out that the CCP has long been the behind-the-scenes backer of Iran, supporting its nuclear program and regional expansion, which threatens global security. Many have drawn parallels between Iran and the CCP, viewing Israel's actions as symbolic blows to authoritarian regimes, and they hope the swift collapse of the CCP. In Israel's recent airstrikes, the Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, Mossad, once again played a crucial role in continuing the strategy that the CCP fears the most. Let the leaders go first. On June 13th, Israel's Defense Minister, Katz, confirmed that a high-level meeting of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Air Force was struck in a precision airstrike. Reuters reported that at least 20 senior Iranian commanders were killed. Israeli security officials told Fox News that intelligence was used to lure Iran's leaders to gather, allowing for a precise strike that ensured they could not escape. The Jerusalem Post editorial stated that the commander of the Revolutionary Guard, Hossein Salami, the chief of staff of the armed forces, Mohammad Bagheri, and nuclear scientists were all eliminated. Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment facility, the air bases in Tabriz and Hamadan, and Tehran's command centers were all severely damaged. The editorial noted that in the past 48 hours, Iran's elite and missile units had experienced fear, with its air defense systems failing and missile attacks proving ineffective. The Iranian regime has spent vast wealth funding groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, leading to isolation, inflation, and high execution rates. The 2022 Women, Life, Freedom protests were brutally suppressed. Now, with the Revolutionary Guard itself suffering, the Iranian people have been given an opportunity to fight for their freedom. Some commenters noted that the power of this editorial was akin to a direct airstrike on Beijing. It struck at the very heart of totalitarian regimes because such regimes are built on fear. What they fear most is the people no longer being afraid. While Iran's theocratic government has created a violent machine to instill fear, its military is being destroyed by Israel, and the foundation they rely on is disappearing. Of course, the theocratic government of Iran is terrified now, but the CCP is even more so, because if Iran's authoritarian regime falls, not only will the CCP's investments be wasted, but it will lose its Middle Eastern leverage. What worries the CCP even more is that the Chinese people see the collapse of Iran as a rehearsal for the CCP's own demise. After the airstrikes, portraits of Iran's generals and nuclear scientists killed in the attack were hung on the streets of Tehran, with the government attempting to stir up public anger. However, the real effect has only been to highlight the heavy toll these attacks have taken on Iran's key figures. In this conflict, Israel has shown unprecedented unity. Prime Minister Netanyahu informed opposition leaders about the operation plans, and both issued supportive statements. The Israeli parliament overcame internal divisions, applauding the pilots, while citizens from all factions followed evacuation instructions. This unity is reminiscent of historic moments such as the 1948 War of Independence and the 1967 Six-Day War. The Jerusalem Post reported that over 100 fighter jets struck Iranian targets, with Mossad disrupting air defense systems and missile storage, highlighting Israel's strategic superiority. Meanwhile, the CCP suffered significant embarrassment in this war. Iran's core air defense system, the Chinese-made JY-10 Air Defense Command and Control System, which CCP military enthusiasts once boasted had an 80% interception rate and was the world's strongest, proved ineffective during Israel's airstrikes. In fact, Iran had conducted multiple drills in preparation for this battle. The commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard's air defense base has stated that a series of new secret air defense systems were deployed near sensitive national sites. However, Iran's new secret air defense systems proved ineffective in real combat. On June 13th, Israeli jets tore through the night sky, and within just 4 hours, Iran's 2-decade investment in nuclear and military command infrastructure was destroyed. So far, the CCP has offered no explanation for the failure of the JY-10 air defense system. Another development causing concern for the CCP is happening. According to commodity data company Kepler, Iran's oil exports have very few other buyers, with over 90% of its oil flowing to China. Most of Iran's crude oil is sold to independent Chinese refineries, which are not part of the state-owned oil companies. If Israel attacks Iran's oil export hubs, China will be one of the most affected countries. Reports say Iran exports about 1.7 million barrels of oil daily, making up less than 2% of global demand. Since most countries won't buy sanctioned Iranian oil, China's refineries have significant bargaining power. In 2023, Iranian oil was discounted by $11 per barrel, compared to similar non-sanctioned oil by about $4 per barrel in 2024. Chinese refineries are highly dependent on Iran's cheap oil, and if Iran's oil exports are disrupted, their refineries will need to buy crude at full price. What the CCP fears most, however, is U.S. President Trump's potential order to destroy Iran's Fordow nuclear facility, which is key to Iran's production of weapons-grade enrichment uranium. The Fordow underground enrichment facility, buried 90 meters beneath a mountain, is currently Israel's only target it cannot destroy. Losing its nuclear deterrent capability will strip Iran's authoritarian regime of any influence in the Middle East and render it useless to the CCP. Signs suggest the U.S. is preparing for a final attack on Iran. According to CNN, the U.S. military recently launched an E-4B Night Watch Strategic Air Command Center. Originally designed for nuclear war and national crises, the Night Watch can resist a nuclear explosion and stay airborne for up to a week, earning it the nickname Air Force One for emergencies. Its deployment usually signals the highest military alert, and the last time it was used was during the 2001 9/11 terrorist attacks. Israel has also deployed F-15D fighter jets equipped with a long-range up-here reconnaissance camera pod to carry out reconnaissance missions over Iran. According to the X account Ascent Technical, the jets may be targeting precise locations of Iran's ground-to-ground missile launch vehicles. Military sources say Israel successfully carried out an airstrike just before an Iranian liquid-fueled missile was launched, hitting the missile and detonating its warhead, creating a massive explosion. This shows that Israel now has full control of the airspace over Iran and can strike any target except Fordo, waiting for the U.S. to act. According to Axios, President Trump's advisory say Trump has been considering a key question. If the U.S. joins Israel in the war and launches massive ordnance penetrators, MOPs, capable of destroying large underground bunkers, would these bombs be able to destroy Iran's underground nuclear facilities? U.S. officials say Trump wants to ensure that such an attack is truly necessary. It won't drag the U.S. into a long-term Middle Eastern war. Most importantly, he wants to make sure it will achieve the goal of destroying Iran's nuclear program. Reports indicate that if Trump declares war, the U.S. will likely destroy Iran's Fordo underground uranium enrichment facility, which is Israel's top target. Israeli officials fear that if the Fordo facility survives the war, Iran's nuclear program will continue. However, Israel lacks the 30,000-pound GBU-57 MOP bomb and the B-2 bombers needed to carry it, while the U.S. is the only country with both the weapon and the ability to strike Iran with its operational range. Pentagon officials have told Trump that they are confident it will succeed. The MOP has been tested multiple times during development and has never been used in combat. A military official stated, "For us, the ultimate goal is simple: no nuclear bombs. If reasonable, we are willing to go in and strike Iran with surgical precision, if necessary." The official added that Trump believes this approach is logical and effective. While Trump has not yet decided whether to use U.S. bombers to strike Iran's hardest-to-reach Fordo nuclear facility, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stated on June 19 that Israel has the capacity to target all of Iran's nuclear facilities, including Fordo. In an interview with Israel's Com Public Broadcasting, Netanyahu was asked whether Israel could destroy Iran's underground Fordo nuclear facility without U.S. assistance. Netanyahu said, "We will achieve all our objectives and hit all their nuclear facilities. We have the capability to do that." Netanyahu added that whether President Trump chooses to join is entirely up to him. "He'll do what's good for the United States, and I'll do what's good for the state of Israel." The potential to use the MOP bomb by the U.S. is closely watched, as President Trump weighs how to execute the operation. If the U.S. does not deploy the bunker buster bombs, can Israel destroy the Fordo nuclear facility? Netanyahu and Israel's ambassador to Washington hinted in recent interviews that the Israeli Defense Forces have other options beyond airstrikes. One option could be a high-risk commando raid. In September of last year, Israeli Special Forces conducted a similar operation on a smaller scale, planting and detonating explosives to destroy a Syrian underground missile factory. Now with Israel fully controlling Iranian airspace and dealing with a heavy blow to Iran's military, this option appears feasible. Regarding Iran's missile launching capabilities, Netanyahu stated in an interview with Israel's public broadcaster that Israel was targeting Iran's missile launchers. He emphasized that the number of rockets Iran possessed was not as important as the number of launchers, adding that he believed Israel had already destroyed more than half of them. The previous day, the Israeli Defense Forces had assessed that approximately 40% of Iran's missile launchers had been destroyed. Analysts say that to ensure the complete destruction of Iran's nuclear facilities, the US and Israel are likely to conduct a joint operation. Israel's commandos would carry out initial reconnaissance and raids, while US B-2 bombers would stand ready. If Israel confirms the target is destroyed, the US might stand down. If the raid fails, US forces would intervene. Regardless of the plan, the goal remains the same: to ensure the complete destruction of Iran's nuclear capabilities. The war between Israel and Iran, while seemingly sudden, has been brewing for some time, with the US and the CCP engaged in a behind-the-scenes struggle. In this war, Israel's swift attack on Iran's regime has also exposed the CCP's vulnerabilities, revealing three major weaknesses in the CCP's strategy. First, the CCP's weapon systems appear strong on the surface, but fall apart when faced with Israeli and US forces. Iran, as a proxy for the CCP, has been eradicated, and the CCP's influence and interest in the Middle East have been severely damaged. Second, the decapitation strategy employed by Israel and the US terrifies the CCP. The CCP's plan to use war to control its people has completely failed. Many Chinese commenters have expressed dissatisfaction with the CCP, viewing Israel's actions as a serious warning to the CCP and shaking the confidence of its leadership. Third, Israel's direct and explicit statements towards the CCP are seen as declarations of war on authoritarianism. If the Chinese people can see through the CCP's evil and weaknesses through this conflict, it could become a fundamental factor leading to the CCP's downfall. The collapse of Iran's authoritarian regime has left the previously fragile China, Russia, Iran, North Korea alliance teetering. From Israel's editorial, people seem to hear a message: CCP, you're next.